J. Freeman llegaría a ser el practicante de lobotomías más infame. Descubrió que podía hacerlas más rápido, sin tener que taladrar el cráneo.
There was no anesthesia, and he would just lift up the eye and stick nothing more than an ice pick right into the brain, right under the orbital bone, and then just rake the thing back and forth until he was satisfied that he had caused enough disruption of brain tissue, and then pull it out.
Freeman viajó por el país en su lobotomóvil, mutilando el cerebro de sus pacientes en el escenario o a veces en el mismo vehículo.
And he would pull up and offer lobotomies to people, get referrals from the local doctors, or sometimes people didn't even go through doctors. They'd go right to the lobotomobile, and he would just do the brain-damaging procedure right there.
Cuando sus privilegios quirúrgicos le fueron revocados, después de haberle causado la muerte a su último paciente en la mesa de operaciones, Freeman ya había realizado, supervisado, más de 3.500 lobotomías, en las cuales él mismo admitió que a más del 25% de sus víctimas las había dejado en un estado vegetativo.
They lobotomized 1 million people in the 40s and the 50s and beginning of the 60s until they came to the conclusion that this was a destructive treatment.
Pero aunque las curas milagrosas pronto fueron denunciadas como fraudes que dañaban el cerebro, los psiquiatras se mantenían un paso adelante, inventando nuevas formas de psicocirugía, presentándolas como avances médicos.
I completely shuddered from head to toe. And that's what I heard in my head when he drilled something in my brain.
Northwest, actually, of the centre hole.
I'm sorry I had to do that.
Yeah, why did you have to do that?
I went, oh, funny, and
Did you?
my head all shook inside.
Oh dear.
Oh, my head shook inside.
Yes, right.
Everything shook, the eyes, everything, the teeth.
Oh, that's well.
That was grievous bodily harm done to my brain. And nobody has the right anyway to play God with somebody's brain.
The whole operation took about 8.5 hours, and they kept me awake for every second of it, and I remember every second of it. And I still remember it to this day because I have this operation every day of my life.
Is that it's new and improved. The new and improved refers strictly to these cosmetic improvements because, in fact, they make it easier on the witnesses. The person isn't shaking all over the table. They're paralyzed now. It isn't new, it isn't improved, it is worse.
Every 10 years or so, there tends to be, first of all, a denial that it causes any harm. Secondly, an acknowledgement that it might have caused harm, but here's a whole new approach, and now this one is blameless, without any research to back it up.
The ECT machines.
2/3 partes de quienes han recibido electroshock son mujeres, a quienes se les diagnosticó el síndrome premenstrual, el trastorno menopáusico o la depresión posparto. La mitad de los pacientes tratados con electroshock son ancianos. Una vez que se les acepta en asistencia social médica, estos ancianos reciben un 360% más de terapia electroconvulsiva que los de 64 años. ¿Y a dónde llega todo esto? A 40.000 muertos y a otros más que son incontables, con tal daño cerebral que no tienen esperanza de recuperar una vida normal. Por $12 de electricidad, solo los psiquiatras de Estados Unidos generan un ingreso de $1 millones. Pero la siguiente cura milagrosa que los psiquiatras agregaron a su arsenal les dio más dinero que nunca, ya que es más rápida, más barata y puede convertir a cada hombre, mujer y niño en un paciente de por vida. A principios de los 50, los psiquiatras descubrieron su siguiente cura milagrosa. Una sustancia química originalmente creada para matar parásitos en los cerdos. Su descubrimiento entorpecía la función cerebral de un modo similar al de meter un punzón en la cuenca del ojo. Era un viejo tratamiento con un nuevo disfraz.
With the advent of these new tranquilizing drugs, it seems not too much to say that we're on the verge of an entirely new era in the treatment of mental illness.
Nombrándola lobotomía química, el psiquiatra canadiense Heinz Lehmann describió el Thorazine como una píldora fácil de tomar, con el mismo efecto que la psicocirugía, pero sin ensuciar nada.
Thorazine provided psychiatry with the entry into mainstream medicine. It had its magic bullet. If I'm a psychiatrist and I have to spend an hour talking to someone in psychotherapy, there's only so much I can charge for that hour. But if I can come in, give you a pill, and send you back out in 15 minutes or 10 minutes, that's a much more efficient use of my time monetarily.
Lo que los psiquiatras no le contaron al público era que el Thorazine causaba una condición neurológica atroz, conocida como disquinesia tardía.
And that's a neurological syndrome where you have muscle twitches, abnormal jerks, which are uncontrolled, and they either last for a long time or sometimes they're permanent. So that's very clear, very well recognized, long-term or permanent brain damage from these medications.
Mr. Blount has virtually no signs of his original illness now. The signs that the movements of his mouth are completely side effects of the drugs that he was on for 20 years. Mr. Blount is quite rational. He understands what's going on. And if you're patient, he can carry on a very rational conversation with you.
Even when you remove the drug, it may still remain. It means you have caused a permanent disabling of the brain. In the late 50s, you get the first signs of it, people starting to worry about it. But it's not until the late 70s that psychiatrists start warning their patients about it. 20 years.
El fabricante del Thorazine, SmithKline French, tenía buenas razones para ocultar la mala noticia. Tan solo el primer año, su inversión tuvo un rendimiento del 3000%. Con el público y la prensa sin conocer los severos e incapacitantes efectos secundarios, médicos y psiquiatras prominentes se reunieron en Puerto Rico para sentar las bases para difundir las drogas psiquiátricas en el futuro. El psiquiatra Nathan Klein escribió lo siguiente en el informe final de la conferencia.
The present breadth of drug use may be almost trivial when we compare it to the possible number of chemical substances that will be available for the control of selective aspects of man's life in the year 2000.
El Dr. Klein encabezó un movimiento que inundó con nuevas drogas psiquiátricas maravillosas el mercado mundial, apoyado por una masiva máquina publicitaria que gastó cientos de millones de dólares. La psiquiatría era ahora una industria de narcotraficantes. Para 1970, la Asociación Psiquiátrica Americana dependía tanto del dinero de las compañías farmacéuticas que el 30% de su presupuesto anual venía de anuncios de estas en sus revistas oficiales.
So we had money flowing to trade organizations, we had money flowing to the doctors, and to their journals. Well, we all know that is going to influence how they think.
The majority of National Institute of Mental Health and of health scientists are getting more money from drug companies on the side than their tax-based salary.
Con tanto dinero por ganar, todo lo que los psiquiatras necesitaban era una teoría científica para justificarlo. ¿La solución? Un informe oficial que declaraba que todos los problemas mentales derivados del llamado desequilibrio químico del cerebro requerían drogas para corregirlo.
This chemical imbalance is one of the greatest fallacies ever foisted upon patients and the public. There is no chemical test to show an imbalance related to any psychiatric disease, whether it's depression, anxiety, what have you.
The chemical imbalance is for the benefit of the psychiatrist. It has to be there so that psychiatrists can treat it.
Pero las fraudulentas teorías del desequilibrio químico no podían ocultar las crecientes pruebas de efectos secundarios comunes y aterradores, como la acaticia.
Akathisia is like an extreme inner nervous agitation.
Idea of the side effects of Prozac. He would never have taken it.
I had two sons, David Lee, age 8, Billy 16. The wife 20 years all gone. I'll tell you why. After being on Prozac for 21 days, my wife shot and killed both of these two boys right here. She turned the gun to herself and shot herself twice.
I took the 9mm automatic, sat down on the bed and put the gun to my head. And I blew a 4-inch hole out the back of my arm instead of my head. Thank God I was a lousy shot. Had someone looked further into Prozac, steps could have been taken to avoid it.
Lo que se suponía que fuera era un panel de psiquiatras que en su gran mayoría tenía lazos financieros con las compañías farmacéuticas.
they basically couldn't find an expert, a doctor, a psychiatrist, at a leading medical school who basically in some way or another didn't have a consulting agreement, hadn't taken money from the pharmaceutical companies.
I do not find from the evidence today that there is credible evidence to support a conclusion that antidepressant drugs cause the emergence and or the intensification of suicidality and or other violent behaviors.
500 deaths, 33 murder cases, and over 20,000 adverse side effects. Would you like to tell me why this drug is still on the market?
Is there an alliance, an unholy alliance between the psychiatric community, the pharmaceutical industry, and the FDA? And the answer is yes.
Esta alianza deshonesta se hizo muy evidente en 1997, cuando las compañías farmacéuticas persuadieron a la FDA a que se les permitiera anunciar directamente al público. Canal ha tomado drogas psiquiátricas basadas en ciencia falsa y respaldadas por gente comprada que regulan las drogas. Sus dañinos medicamentos logran utilidades brutas de casi $27 mil millones al año. Y mientras los psiquiatras encontraban una forma de diagnosticar y drogar a cada habitante del planeta, en otro frente continuaban su asalto contra nuestras libertades más personales. Los psiquiatras exigen el derecho absoluto a determinar qué es lo mejor para el llamado enfermo mental. Después de todo,
as practiced by real doctors, psychiatrists, of course, believe that people can be treated against their will.
En 1956, el psiquiatra Winfred Overholzer presentó un plan al Congreso en el que tenía la intención de llevar la internación involuntaria a un nuevo nivel. El plan era comprar 400.000 hectáreas de páramos en Alaska, construir un inmenso hospital mental y cambiar las leyes de internación para que se pudiera enviar a cualquiera con una simple indicación de un psiquiatra. El proyecto de ley...
Please lock me up. Doctors don't lock up anybody. Psychiatrists lock you up.
Incluso los niños pueden ser separados de sus padres, dejándoles poco recurso legal.
They just invaded our home. They came in with officers. Our kids were scared. You know, they come in with a piece of paper and say, "You're giving us your kids." And it's like, you know, how can they just come in and do that?
She said, "You could be arrested for medical neglect." And I said, "But how was that when, you know, this is my child?" And I
wrist and the shoulder restraints. And if when that process was happening, if there was almost any resistance at all, the person then would be medicated to a point where they would almost be knocked out.
We had one case where they actually took a patient in a seclusion room and beat him up. Then they lied about it to the services that investigated. So it's a pretty wide range of abuse issues that we've encountered.
El personal psiquiátrico provoca a sus pacientes a la violencia para poder cobrar a las compañías de seguro hasta $1,600 diarios por cada paciente inmovilizado.
Report shows during the restraint, quote, Rochelle stated several times she could not breathe.
In almost all respects, the staff behaved appropriately, followed the standards.
Aprovechándose de que las leyes sobre la restricción son débiles o vagas, a los psiquiatras y a su personal casi nunca se les acusa criminalmente por agresión con lesiones y asesinato.
He begged me to take him home, take him out of there, that they were treating him wrongly, and he didn't want to stay there. And I got a call that there had been